did you make of the pushback and criticism you got for what seemed like a very thoughtful piece about Nelson Mandela?
Well, I think, having analyzed it over the weekend, there were two waves of rejection of the idea of honoring Mandela. One wave was people who confused Mandela's role with the African National Congress during the period when he was in jail. He spent 27 years in jail, which was the peak of the African National Congress's violence, much of which was violence against other blacks, not just violence against, in fact, mostly not violence against the government. The other was, I think, that some elements of the left, particularly on one news channel, went overboard in trying to use this as an excuse to attack Ronald Reagan. And I think people who are Reagan loyalists, who know that Reagan had condemned apartheid, Reagan had called for Mandela to be released. Reagan actually appointed the first black ambassador to South Africa, whose job was to pressure the Afrikaans government. And that Reagan, this is just another excuse for the left to try to smear Reagan. So there's a lot of anger on the right about this opportunity being used inappropriately. Mandela himself, I think you caught the exact right word, he's a very complex person with a very long life, and I think he's the most important figure in sub-Saharan Africa in the last 100 years. He offers a hope for reconciliation and a hope for moving forward with free enterprise and private property and an opportunity to create jobs and to live together that is greater than any other African leader of the last 100 years. And I think that part of his memory has to be preserved and built upon.
So, Newt, if you can, inform the speculation on both of these fronts and tell people what you think the proper perception be. First, with the idea that Nelson Mandela was someone who was advocating forceful overthrow early on. That is a big part of what got him in prison. And then on the other side, the idea that when he was in prison, that the United States wasn't actively supporting his release to some satisfaction, and that during the Iraq War, he was an outspoken critic of using force. We hear that he was just about to get on a plane to discuss with Saddam Hussein before the bombing started. What do you see as the right way to view these two different perspectives?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you look at his entire life, for the overwhelming early part of his life, he was opposed to violence. All of his life, he was opposed to racism. He consistently favored bringing South Africans of all backgrounds together and deeply opposed the more racial wing of the independence movement. The other thing you have to remember about him is he was deeply committed to a nonviolent approach until you had a South African dictatorship under the Afrikaans parties, which made it impossible to have anything that was purely nonviolent. And I think if you look at the Sharpeville massacre of 1960, where there were 69 people killed by the police, you see the context in which he was moving, I think, with sadness but determination towards a sabotage campaign. But even then, while he was out of jail, his focus was on sabotage acts that minimized loss of life. I mean, he was a man who really didn't want to go down that road, but who I think found himself in a position where he had no choice. The American government's position, frankly, was consistently anti-apartheid, but also in a context that it's easy for us to forget. You had Zimbabwe collapsing under a terrible dictatorship. You had Mozambique and Angola in the middle of a communist effort to take them over. We were in the middle of the Cold War, and frankly, the priorities of the United States government were to defeat the Soviet Union, and they were very cautious about doing things that distracted them from that. But by 1985, a number of us, Vin Weber, Bob Walker, and myself among them, had led an effort that really convinced Reagan to become more proactive. And if you look at what he said and did during that period, just think about the idea of appointing a black ambassador to a country that is racially, legally, totally segregated, and the signal that sent to every young black in South Africa that the United States was doing what it could to be on their side. I think it was a significant step.